All right. Glad to have you here. I missed you. I missed you. I hope you've missed me. And so, whether you're joining us from YouTube or from Facebook, just go ahead and comment. Just let us know where you're from. If you're glad to be back online with us tonight, just go ahead and give us a thumbs up, and we'll get started here momentarily. I just want to see where everybody's from. Really glad, really glad to see everybody on tonight. All right. Amen. You notice it's just a little different tonight. A little different. We're trying something new tonight in a different place. Good evening. Good evening, Janet Taylor. Good evening, Sister Janet. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Good evening. All right. Sister Middleton, good to see you tonight as well. Good evening to you. Good evening. Sister Gloria and Vince, good to see you. Good to see you online tonight. I hope and pray that you're doing well. All right, Sister Valerie, good to see you tonight. Good to see you as well. Good to see you online tonight. As you're coming in, go ahead and like and share this video if you're on Facebook. If you also, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and like, and if you can, subscribe to our page, Second Baptist Church of Reno. Let us subscribe, and then go ahead and share this video as well. Good evening, Sister Smith. Good evening. Good evening, Sister Melinda Smith. Good evening as well. All right, joining us from YouTube. All right, and good evening, Brother McCray. Brother McCray, good to see you online. All right, Sister Dana, Minister Dana Taylor, good to see you on this line as well. Again, if you're just now coming in, just go ahead and like and share this video. Let's get it out to as many people as possible. Grateful to be back with you on this Tuesday evening. Good evening, Sister Deborah Cole. Deborah, if you all know Debbie, she tells us all to pronounce her name Deborah. And my friend from New York, Sister Lizette Bradley. Good evening. Good to see you as well. She had texted me a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, when are y'all gonna be back on? When are you gonna be back on?" So, all right, all right. So let's go ahead and get started with a word of prayer. Father, in the name of Jesus, we're thankful and grateful for this opportunity that we have to study your word. We're so thankful for who you are in the midst of this country, in the midst of this world, in the midst of what's happening. Father, we thank you and we praise you because you're still a God who is in control. We thank you because you are still, Father, sovereign and you are amazing. And so we thank you for who you are and for who you are to us. So, Father, I pray that your spirit will be with us tonight as we study your word. Father, help us to understand your word and to apply it better to our lives. And we'll be so careful to give your name the praise, the honor, and the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So tonight, again, just to remind you how this works. If you haven't been on for a while, or if this is your first or second time viewing with us, we hope and pray that this Bible study is a blessing to you. We like to have interactive Bible study. Before the pandemic hit, Tuesday nights were so much fun because we were able to interact together, get into the Word of God, and we were able to better understand what this Word meant to us, especially in this current climate, in this current time. And so, what we always encourage you to do is if you don't watch live on Sunday or you don't watch on Sunday, between Sunday and Tuesday night, go to our YouTube channel, Second Baptist Church of Reno, and look for the latest video. Look for the latest video so that you can get caught up on what that word is. And we have what's called here at Second Baptist a sermon based Bible study. In other words, what we want to do is we want to build on the sermon that we had from Sunday so that we can go deeper into it. We can ask questions. You can understand not just what it's saying, but how you can apply it to your life. And that is what's most important. The word sounds good. It's great. It's wonderful. When I was growing up in church, church was one of my favorite things to do. Sunday mornings, I loved Sunday mornings. As a matter of fact, I'm not a morning person, but on Sunday morning, I had no problem getting up, and that's still the way it is. Even on Sunday mornings to this day, that's the one day of the week that I don't have a problem getting up. And there comes a time, though, when the word has to shift from being great sounding to being applicable. So Bible study allows us to have those interactive moments to where you're able to ask questions so that you can learn how to apply this word for your life so that you are made better for it. And so get those questions ready, type them into the live feed, and Minister Dean, who is running my deck tonight, he's going to be on the lookout. We're doing a different uh, setup on tonight, so I don't have the chance to see the comments on my screen as they are live. So Minister Dean will pop in and out, and he'll let me know what questions there are, and we'll go ahead and we'll answer those to the best of our ability. All right. So if this is your first or second time joining us, just type, hey, my first or second time. And Second Baptist family and friends that are on with us on a consistent basis, go ahead and say what's up to them. I would love to hug and greet you, high five, daps. If people are still doing daps, I would love to do that, but we can't do that right now since we're in this digital space. So, Second Baptist family and friends, go ahead and welcome our visitors. And let's get into this word from Sunday. What's going on? So, the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about this subject, what's going on. And we come from Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11, and verse 25. So Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11, and verse 25 in the English Standard Version. Now I'm going to go ahead and read for you so that we can refresh ourselves with what it said. Fret not yourself because of evildoers, be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Oh, that's some good stuff right there. Oh, my goodness. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. I have been young, verse 25, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread. Verse 25 in the King James Version, it says, I have been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. And we're just discussing the topic, what's going on? What's going on? So this past Sunday, we dealt with the second point, which was you have to control your rest. But before we get into controlling your rest, let's go back and let's review controlling your rage. You have to control your rage. So the 3 points that we're going to be discussing throughout this entire message is control your rage, which was the first week. The second was control your rest. And the third and upcoming, the last point that we'll get to um, in the next week or so is control your role. All right. So control your rage, control your rage. I really want to hear from you based upon this, the recent political climate in the country and what's happening within the world, what's happening in our communities. What are some things that you are angry about? What are some things that you're upset about, you're up in arms about, you're just anxious about, whatever you are? Um, I want you to type that in and let's talk about some of that. Let's talk about some of that. So, we all are very familiar with what's happening within this country right now in terms of the political climate. And let me say this: that I'm not here to advocate for one candidate over another. I learned that early in my pastorate that we're not taking sides here because everybody has their different political beliefs, and I support that. And so that's the reason why I don't endorse candidates. I don't favor one candidate over the other. Another thing I don't do is I don't tell people who I vote for. I don't tell people who I vote for. When I was growing up in my household, even my parents, I remember being a young child, and when it was time for voting in November, I can remember my parents coming back after voting, coming home, and I would be asking, "Who did you vote for?" And they would say, "I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. That's something private." Now, they would talk about the privilege of voting, and they instilled that in all of us, the privilege of voting, especially being African Americans, and the struggle that our ancestors and our forefathers went through, and the things that they had to actually endure and go through themselves. My father, being from the builder generation or the silent generation, saw a lot of that oppression. My mother, being a baby boomer, saw those things firsthand and could give us accounts of the racism that they would see and encounter. And some of the things that they said they saw, they endured, had to go through. They said at their young age, at that time, they did not necessarily know that it was racist or that it was inequalities, but they were saying that now, as they've gotten older, they can see that indeed there were these moments that they had to endure and that their families had to endure. So, you know, but they talked about the right to vote, and they instilled what a privilege that was and still is. And so we vote, but they always taught us, you don't tell people who you vote for. And I just, to this day, I just don't tell people who I vote for. And being a pastor, we had a situation happen here earlier where people talked about their political differences, and it just created some turmoil within the congregation. Thank God that we were able to deal with it in a manner that it didn't spill over into the congregation at large. But it was, very disheartening for me as a pastor, and we ended up seeing some differences come out. So that being said, I don't talk about endorsing specific candidates for that very, very reason. I believe everybody has a right to believe, however they choose to believe. But I will say that no matter who you voted for, you can't deny all of the division that we have going on within the country. Whether you um, believe however you believe the source of that division, wherever you believe the source of that division has come from, you can't deny that there's division within the country. We are so divided right now in these United States of America, and I'm not so sure how united we are right now. But you can't deny that right now there's a whole bunch of division going on. And so within that, I wanted to be able to speak to that. And as I was speaking and praying about that, I'm asking God, how do we address this? So again, if you have some things that you're angry about, that you are just unsure about, type them in. I'd love to hear what those are. But as we get into this psalm, David is believed to be the writer. David is the writer of this psalm, Psalm 37. Fret not thyself because of evildoers. And so when we get into all of this, let me just kind of go back and recap. When we get back to understanding Psalm 37, Psalm 37 is what we call a wisdom psalm. Now, um, I could get to these lyrics of Marvin Gaye, but let me dive into let me dive into the psalm. The psalm is a wisdom psalm, and so let me help explain what that means. So you have different literary forms within the Bible. So what's called you have what's called narrative. All right, so go ahead and somebody type narrative so that I know that you're getting it. So you have narrative. Narrative is basically you're just telling a story. That's what it is. So your narrative is you're just telling a story. When we talk about Exodus, the children of Israel coming out of bondage in Egypt, that's a narrative. Okay. Then you have what's called discourse. Okay. So you have what's called discourse, and discourse is basically kind of like instructions, building on precept on top of precept. So you have discourse. Discourse is what you find in the New Testament with a lot of the epistles that Paul writes. That's really kind of discourse. And then you have a third that's called poetry. Okay, you have poetry. Okay, so you have poetry, and poetry, I like, as Dr. Ray Lubeck says, poetry is he talks about it in his book, Understanding How to Read the Bible. He talks about being able to he describes poetry as something that you recognize more than you define. The language is descriptive. Um, there are some thoughts that are implied that, but not necessarily described full out. What I love about poetry, he talks about, then he goes into his book and he talks about how you see poetry that's inserted within narrative and within discourse. And he describes that poetry is like, it's like the musical, it's like a song in a musical. Like, you know how you're watching this movie and all of a sudden everybody breaks out into music, and for me that's disturbing because everybody automatically knows the choreography, they automatically know all the lines, they know how to harmonize, all kind of stuff. But that's another story for another day. But he talks about how poetry is like that, inserted into scripture, into narrative you see poetry, and to discourse you see that poetry. And so it's descriptive language to describe an element of God. Okay, so we see that. So in the Psalms, the Psalms we know are that the Psalms are songs actually. So the Psalms um, are a form of that. So we see that. Okay, Psalm 37 is it is poetry and it is wisdom. Okay, then you have different things. So you have your literary type. Then you have your genres. And so this genre is wisdom. Okay. And so when you see wisdom, wisdom is typically it's a generalization. And so like Proverbs, the book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom, right? We know Proverbs talks about train up a child in the way he ought to go. When he's old, he won't depart from it, right? So you see that. That's a generalization. Wisdom says that generally, if you do these things, then generally this is the thing, this is the way the thing's going to turn out. Okay. And the other thing is that you have to also see is that as that what I love about this, and that's the reason why I read the verse 25 in this psalm is because David is telling us that he was once young, but now he's old, but he's never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread or his children begging bread. And what David is saying is he's not lived a long time. And based upon me living a long time, this is what I've seen. This is my wisdom that I have acquired. And this is now, I'm now passing this wisdom on to you all. Have you ever been in situations or been around people that are just wise because they just lived? They've lived, so they just become wise. I'm telling you that you gain wisdom. We hope we gain wisdom by getting up every morning and by putting one foot in front of the next, by just continuing to move on. That's what I love about wisdom literature. And so scholars say that there's so much wisdom locked up in Psalm 37 that this psalm actually could be included in Proverbs. That's how much wisdom is in this psalm. I love it. And I think that right now, while we're going through all of this turmoil in the United States of America and in the world, I think right now we need some wisdom. We need some people who have lived a life, who have been around who have been around the sun a few times, and says, you know what, this is kind of what's going on, and I want to be help. I want to help somebody. Does anybody tonight need just a little help? Do you need a little help? I know that I need a little help myself. So let's get into this. Psalm 37, he opens up and he talks about not fretting yourself because of evil people. King James Version says because of evildoers. So let's go and talk about controlling your rage. So he opens up again and he tells the reader of this psalm, he says, don't fret because of evil people or be envious of those who are doing wrong. And so what I need you to see is David's initial focus is not on the people that are doing wrong. His initial focus isn't even on God, it's on the individuals themselves. And this is important for us to understand because here's the thing is that a lot of times, I don't know about you, so let me just talk about DeSean, is when things go wrong in life or when things are not up to par, a lot of times my initial focus is on other people. Did you see what they did? Did you hear what they said? Did you catch what they did slide? I don't even, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to examine ourselves first. That's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to do. In other words, what David is saying, basically, check yourself. Check yourself. You got to check yourself. I remember when I was working in corporate retail and I was moving up to a position of management, and they were helping us understand this guide, this going I was going through training, and there was this module that I was learning about coaching, and they were talking about in that module they were saying that if your team is not getting the concept, if your team is not performing to their level of capability, and you're doing constant coaching, then when you go back in for that secondary coaching, that third coaching, when you're going back into those additional coaching sessions, what the company admonished us to do was to look at the coach. They said, so first of all, view the coach. Is there something that you're not doing, that you're not saying, that you could say differently? Reverend Dr. Rodney Till and one of my colleagues, one of my friends out of Washington D.C., told me a long time ago. He said, DeSean, there are uh, many ways of saying the same thing. He said, but there's always a better way of saying it. In other words, what he was saying is there's already a good, better, and a best way to say the same thing, to convey the same message, so that people can receive the message and it has the greatest impact. And so, really, what we have to see in this is David saying, look at yourself. He's saying, don't. He said, don't get hot because of evildoers. Let me help you get his. Again, his first initial focus is on the individual. And what I love about this is African Bible scholars, they say this, and I want to make sure that I quote this directly from them. It's the first part of the psalm is addressed to the person whose faith is in danger because their experience seems to contradict what they believe. Before I go even any further with that quote, is there anybody right now that's watching that says, Pastor DeSean, I must admit that my faith has been endangered through this pandemic, through the social injustice, through the political unrest, that my faith has been in danger because my experience is contradicting what I believe. Ooh, my goodness, my goodness. If that's you right there, I'll go ahead and write this, type in right now, that Pastor, that's me. That's me. Or I've been there. I've been there. And so we get in this position where if we're not careful, if we're not careful, we will honestly, our faith will begin to slip if we don't check ourselves. And that's why I want to submit to you tonight that David says, I need you to focus on yourself first, because your faith is about to slip. Your faith is in danger and it's about to slip. Paul Dupre said he was challenged by a friend that he now found out is racist, and that's hard. That's hard. There are people, that I have seen in our church. It breaks my heart. That have come to me and said, Pastor, I found out people's true motives and stuff. I found out that people I've been friends with for years, we no longer be friends because they're really showing their intentions, and they're showing who they are, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I don't say, to me it's heartbreaking. At Second Baptist, we are becoming a multicultural congregation. We're becoming a multicultural congregation, multi-ethnic. Not really believe that God is going to do something special and unique with Second Baptist. I believe that's the reason why He started diversifying us before we closed our doors due to COVID. And I was telling one of the leaders, I said, I cannot wait till we reopen. I've seen some people in the community here and there that are uh, that are not African American, that are telling us, hey, we are tuning in. We are with you. We are with you all. We cannot wait till the church reopens. What a wonderful day that will be, to see the diversity that God is creating. And I just want to say that I believe that God is able to bring us together, because there is no, I mean, because He doesn't see that. He sees people, He sees humanity. I preached about that a few weeks ago, and I don't want to get into that. But here's the thing is, um, people's hearts are breaking because, again, they're realizing that other people have different motives, that they have different views, that they have different ways of seeing things. And I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing, the common thread throughout all of them, is that everybody's saying, Pastor, nobody's open to hearing, nobody's open to talking and listening and having a space where we can see different things. And to me is just heartening that we can't even be courageous enough to have these conversations. And so we do have to control our rage. We have to control our rage, and the way that it starts is by checking ourselves. All right, let's get a little further into this text. So, what African Bible scholars go further to suggest, they say, in fact, the first two verses can be regarded as a summary of the entire psalm. The believer who observes the life of the wicked not only becomes not only becomes indignant about their prosperity, but is also tempted to envy it. So, in other words, when you start seeing people who are doing wrong, and they are seemingly being blessed and they're seemingly being rewarded, sometimes those people, those of us who are trying to do the right thing, who are trying to be obedient, who are trying to do things by the book, right? Um, they we have a tendency to there's a propensity to want to emulate those people, to emulate their actions, to emulate their thought patterns, to emulate those things because we want the same results. And here in America, we have to be careful because we tie blessings, hear me clearly, we tie blessings to materialistic things. We judge how blessed one is by the amount of things one has. We have to be careful about that. And so when we see evil people start getting acquiring things, we automatically assume that they are blessed and we're not. But I'm telling you, there are people. I watch all these documentaries all the time, and there are people, these famous people, celebrities, stars, people that we try to be like, people that we try to emulate. They have all of the world. They have the cars, the houses, the money. They have everything, and yet they are tormented. What profiteth a man to gain the whole world and to lose his soul? So we have to be careful about envying and being upset with these people because if we're not careful, we will find ourselves falling victim to try and copy their behaviors. So the question I want to ask is, what makes the people evil? That's a good question. Wouldn't you say that? What makes these people evil? Here's verse 12. Verse 12 of the text. The wicked plot against the godly, they snarl at them in defiance. Verse 14, the wicked draw their sword and string their bows to kill the poor and the oppressed, to slaughter those who do right. Verse 21, the wicked borrow and never repay. So, in other words, what David is saying, he said, this is what makes people evil. They are schemers, they are boldly disobedient, they form weapons to kill and oppress others, and they borrow and never repay. They are schemers, they are boldly disobedient, they form weapons, whether it's physical weapons, whether it's emotional weapons, whether it's mental weapons, whether it's financial weapons. They form weapons to kill and oppress others. Listen, and slaughter those who do right. So they don't want people doing right to succeed. They're going to kill you because why? Because they want to protect a lie. This is what makes the people evil according to this text. All right, we're still in the text. We're still in the text. Again, verse 12. The wicked plot against the godly. They are schemers. Verse 14. The wicked draw their swords and string their bows, and they're doing this so they are forming weapons, and they borrow and never repay. Now, let me say this because some people are like, Pastor, I borrowed some money and I hadn't repaid it. You might have had really good intentions. If you had good intentions of borrowing that money and repaying, and something happened, you know, things like that happen. Now, be a person of integrity. Go to that person and tell them what happened. If you can repay it, great, repay it. If you can't repay it, just have a conversation with that person. But here's what we're talking about. Here's what I believe David is saying: is what makes people wicked is not just their actions, but it's the motive behind their actions. Oh my goodness, that's good to me. What makes people wicked, what makes people evil, is not just their actions, but it's the motive behind their actions. And so what we have to be careful about, and here's the reason why he says, go ahead, and he says, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be envious of the workers of those who do bad. Here's the reason why: it's because if you don't guard yourself, you'll start mimicking their actions, but you'll pick up their intentions. That one even on my notes, but that was good to somebody. Was that good to somebody? Somebody go ahead and just type in that was good to me. You'll start mimicking. We will start mimicking. Let me throw myself into it because I'm not exempt from this. We will start. Listen to me. We will start uh, mimicking their actions, but will fall victim to their intentions because again, what makes them evil, what makes them wicked, are their intentions. Right, Dean? Do we have any questions that we need to address before I move on to the latter part? Do we
Not
have
so
any?
much questions, but we have some great pain, sadly, but truthfully, and we have some observations that and let's see. Dana's been so well. Mark, brother Mark says it does break my heart to see how the devil is dividing people, and
Mm,
that of course is so prevalent and powerful. And people are having challenges with people that they thought they knew or being, you know, not what they thought.
mm,
So whether it's deception or anyway, um, and then my experience is contradicted in what I show enough believe, and that was
hmm.
Tara. He says because she's commenting back as well, and people are
Wow.
saying that's me. They're seeing so much, so much.
Wow.
Wow. Yep.
Wow. It breaks my heart as well to see, these people and that have had to go through. I've seen people even in my own family. So they had to unfriend people on Facebook. I haven't had to get to that point. But I will say that I know that it's disheartening. But I really believe that God is going to use Second Baptist. I don't know how he's going to use this, but I believe that God is going to use Second Baptist to really start bringing some healing to this community and hopefully to this country. I'm beginning to see the plan of God unfold, and I don't see it all. I don't see it all, but I'm beginning to see it unfold, and I'm grateful to be a part of that plan. My goodness, oh, this is good stuff. Oh, okay. Let's continue on. Let's continue on. And thank you so much for those of you that have been commenting. Continue to comment so that we can go deeper. And again, the focus of this study is not just to have, not just to have good rhetoric, not just to listen to good rhetoric, but most importantly, to see how this is still relevant to us in 2021 and how we can apply this to our lives so that we can be made better for it. All right. Um, so let me kind of go back and let me go back and address the being blessed. I was talking to Doctor Robert Manaway Sr., one of my fathers in the gospel, and he was telling me, he said, DeSean, um, he calls me pastor when we're in the serious dialogue. But he's like, Pastor, um, people are calling things blessed and not blessed. That's basically what he's saying. And we have to be careful with that. We have to be careful with that, you all, because again, because we are so materialistic driven in this modern day society, we automatically equate materialistic things to blessings. But I want to tell you, I mean, what good is it having a 5 or 6 or 7 bedroom house and you don't have any peace in that house? You can't go to one room in that house and have any peace. What good is it having the cars and all that kind of stuff when you don't have any joy? What good is it having the the quote unquote perfect life, but you have the clothes that you have, the spouse that that you like, you have the 2.5 children. You have this facade, but you don't have the fulfillment of Christ in your life. We've got to learn what being blessed is all about. And perhaps, maybe God is using this pandemic to show us what true blessings are. Ah, and so let me just close this portion by saying this: that if the things that the people have acquired have been acquired through disobedience, through oppression, through results of scheming people, through unresolved debt, those are not blessings, you all. Those are consequences to actions. Let me just say that. Those are consequences to actions. And so, what I wanted to tell you is that, yeah, uh, people can get over on people until they get caught. They're being blessed, and well, they're not being blessed. What that is basically they are receiving the direct results of those schemes. And those schemes on the front end seem profitable. They seem very profitable, and they will make those of us that know backstories and all this kind of stuff become envious and become heated. Now, what you have to understand about fret and envious in the Hebrew, the root word of those two words in Hebrew, really, the root word is hot or heated. So, what the psalmist, what David is telling is, don't become heated. And what he's not saying is this, is that these situations will make you heated. So he's not saying like you won't get there, but he's saying control it, because it will cause you to act out in the way that's not godly. And we have to still be godly. The Bible says be angry and sin not. It didn't say don't get angry, just don't sin. So it said control your rage. What I want to point out to you is that the author does never say, he never says that prosperity is wrong. So I don't want you to get in your mind that prosperity is wrong. Oh my goodness, that everything that is prosperity, we have to discount it. Not saying that. What he's saying is that we have to examine the way which we go about obtaining that prosperity. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a nice house, having nice clothes, having cars that are nice. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having money in the bank. There's nothing wrong with any of that. What I am saying is that it's wrong when we obtain them by dishonest means, by dishonest gain. That's not the way of God. That is not the way of God.
Yep. Minister Taylor says some people equate blessings to consequences and their actions, but God will never bless you in a way that contradicts his word.
And that's important. That goes actually back to what Pastor Manaway said, Dr. Manaway said. He said that we call blessings blessings, but when we look at how we obtain the blessing, it's not even scriptural. It's not even biblical. We have to be careful about, and that's important. We have to line up. We have to line the blessings with the word of God. Great insight. Great insight. Is there any other insight, Mr. Dean?
Yeah. Paul says, search me, God, and know that my troubled heart. Test me and know that I am anxious in my anxious thoughts. See if there's any in any way offensive in me, excuse me, and lead me the way of everlasting life. And that's from Psalms 139, 23 through 24. And it speaks to the ability to control your rage, because you acknowledge who gives us all of this opportunity and challenge to overcome. And I just love it. Brilliant.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Actually, that was a great segue, Minister Dean, because let's get into point number 2, which is control your rest. So control your rest, because I like what Paul says there. Paul Dupre talked about focusing on God. So let's get into point number 2, which is what I preached about on Sunday. Control your rest. Verse 7, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And the King James Version says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. You know, sometimes it's hard to wait on God. But not only is it hard to wait on him, but the psalmist says, not only wait on him, but wait patiently on him. He tells you how to wait on God. Wait patiently for him. Oh my goodness. Is there anybody out there right now that is struggling with your patience? Just struggling. God, help me to be more patient. If that's you, just say, God, help me to be more patient. Help me to be more patient. Amen. And I need to pray that. That's my prayer right now. God, help me to be more patient. There's some things that I know God has in store for me, and I have a tendency to want to hurry them up, especially when I find out what they are. It's like, it's like getting insight on a Christmas present that you asked for, and you happen to come across it in the closet that you probably had no business being in. But you see the present and it hasn't been wrapped yet, and then you're just anticipating for the day that it's coming, and that's kind of how sometimes God does with us, and that's why I'm so grateful. He doesn't show us everything. He shows us enough to continue on, but waiting patiently on God, especially in a time when people are doing wrong and seemingly being blessed, or let me change that language, or seemingly advancing forward. And that seems unfair. So verse 7, he says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Again, King James Version says, rest in the Lord. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. And what you need to understand is that verse 7 through 11 are expansions of the theme that David outlined in verses 1 through 6. So what I love about this psalm is David doesn't just state verses 1 through 6 about fretting not yourself because of the evildoers, but he goes and he further emphasizes these themes that he started in verses 1 through 6. Um, let me remind you of some things that Lizette Borelli says. The 5 benefits of being quiet. So the psalmist basically says, he says, be still before the Lord, rest in the Lord. Other translations said, be quiet before the Lord. So sometimes you got to be quiet. Be quiet. Um, from a scientific perspective, being quiet improves memory. It stimulates brain growth. It relieves stress. It fights insomnia and it heightens sensitivity. Let me say those 5 things again. It improves memory. It stimulates brain growth. It relieves stress. It fights insomnia and it heightens sensitivity. Let me say this again, that some of y'all or some of us that have problems with our memory, maybe the reason why we can't remember is because we don't take enough time to be quiet. Just be quiet. Silence yourself. Get in the silent place. Put your phone. If you're not at the point where you can turn your phone off on all your mobile devices, put them on silent. Put them on do not disturb for 30 minutes. Just give yourself just some time to be quiet. It stimulates brain growth. So it develops new cells that will help to learn, remember, and even balance emotions. Some of us that are off balance emotionally, do you know that possibly being quiet could help us balance our emotions? How much more emotionally stable could some of us be if we would just learn how to be quiet? I heard that sometimes being quiet wins many arguments. That's all I'm gonna say. It relieves stress. And so, relieving stress in the 2006 study in heart, silence is more relaxing than relaxing music. It helps reduce blood pressure. It helps improve blood circulation in the brain. So it relieves your stress. Those of us that are stressed, go ahead, be silent. Fights insomnia. Those of us that can't get some sleep, be quiet. And that quietness will lead to reduction in insomnia, reduction in being fatigued, and reduction in being depressed. And it being quiet also heightens sensitivity. Now this makes sense to me. And when I read this, when I studied this portion of the sermon out, this made sense to me. That when you're quiet, it improves your sights. Excuse me, it improves sight. It improves uh, sounds, thoughts, intentions, and emotions. Now this makes sense to me because when Ray Charles lost his sight, all of his other sentences became heightened. There was one scene in the movie where he was cooking chicken, and the girl was upset with him because he didn't turn on the he didn't turn on the light. She said, "I told you uh, to stop doing that in the dark." He said, "Why?" He said, "I can't see anyways." Okay, that was funny to me. Let me get back. But really, here's the thing: is control your rest because sometimes God is saying, "I need you to be quiet. I need you just to be quiet. I need you to be quiet." Let me go ahead and remind you here the B clause of verse 7. Um, don't fret. In other words, don't get heated when people succeed in their ways, not, and when they carry out their wicked schemes. Notice the language. He's saying when, not if. So it's not a conditional statement. It is an absolute. These things are going to happen. They're going to happen. People are going to succeed in their schemes, in their dishonesty, in their plots, in their oppression. They're going to succeed. And he says, don't get heated when this happens. I'm letting you know that it is going to happen. It's going to happen. And so, what we have to understand is David, through his wisdom, through just living day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, what he's saying is, I've seen this happen over and over again. So, what I need to help prepare you all is I need to help prepare you all for the inevitability that is bound to happen. These things are inevitable. All right.
There's some good comments here, and everybody obviously is praying, Lord, please help me be more patient, and they're just longing for
Mm,
this kind of way. But Tara says this, and I think this is really beautiful and brilliant and apropos.
mm,
This is good, Pastor. A whole new way to look at weight control, controlling
mm.
my rest, weight control. I love that. I love that.
Weight control.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't see what's the last name on that.
Trass,
Trash.
Trass.
Uh-huh. I thought that I
Tara.
said that's Tara Trash. That's my sister from New Antioch. Yes. I,
Mhm.
she's extremely clever. She's extremely clever in that regard. Weight control. Okay, Tara, you really given me something to think about. Weight control. Woo!
And Renell
Um,
says problem sleeping for sure. Too much stimulation when I'm not quiet,
mm,
and that is
mm.
so true. So true.
And here's the thing about, that's a good point that you brought up. Too much stimulation when you're not quiet. And here's the thing is that there can be too much stimulation even when you're quiet.
Mm.
Because let's think about this. For me to go to sleep, I have to have the TV on. If I don't have the TV on, it's too quiet. My brain is racing, all that kind of stuff, because we have
Mhm.
so much stimuli going on around us. We don't even realize the stimuli that we have going on. As a matter of fact, every Sunday, I think this is ironic, but every Sunday morning before I preach, uh, Apple sends me a screen activity of what I've had on my iPad and what I've had on my iPhone throughout the week. And some weeks throughout the pandemic, I've seen my screen activity jump significantly. And so you don't realize that all these things are happening, but all these things around us. God is just silence yourself, just silence yourself. But Tara, weight control. My goodness. You know what? Tara, I'm not sure if you're able to, but Dean, if you would go ahead and just post that link where she can join us, so you can talk a little bit about weight control. If you're able to, Tara, join us. Go ahead and tap the link so that you can come on real fast and talk a little bit about that if you're able to. If not, I understand. But that was so good that I want the people to hear that weight control. Tara is a uh, phenomenal evangelist, and she's just so creative. That's just good. Ooh. Mm,
Yeah,
mm, mm.
and here's what she says. Let me put it up on the screen as well. So, to some of the same benefits of weight control, WEIGH tree controls, she says that are noticed
Hmm.
in weight control. So, similarities in our discipline and in our observation. So, we could lay aside the weight, WEIGHT, weights, and control our weight, our
Ooh.
if we controlled our WAIT, our weight, and our
Ooh.
rest. Oh yes, the stimulation.
Ooh.
This is good. This is good.
Ooh, this is good. This is good to me. Oh my goodness. This is so good. Um, yeah, the weight, the WEIGHT can
Mhm.
be controlled if we learn how to WAIT. Ooh, that's some good. And then wait patiently.
Mm.
We have to wait patiently on the Lord. Oh my goodness, wait.
Here's a good one. Here's a one. Paul says, "Wait, WAIT. Why am I talking?"
All right. Oh, that's good. That's good. I know that somebody that was giving me some coaching. That's a great acronym. Why am I talking? That's good. That's good. You know what? That it got me thinking. What does patient mean? And as I looked this up, because patiently is an adverb, so it's really describing, what you need to do with describing the verb, that type of action you take with the verb. Listen to this, you all. That patiently is described as it's a way that shows tolerance. Listen to you. Well, listen to me. Oh, as Dr. Gina Stewart said, listen to me with your good ear. And it's a way that shows tolerance of delays, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. Ooh. When we wait patiently, when the psalmist is telling us to wait patiently, he's telling us to wait in a way that shows tolerance of delays, of problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. And especially, this is so true in this context of Psalm 37, because he's telling us not to get heated because of the evildoers when they're advancing with their schemes of dishonesty and oppression and all this stuff. He's telling us, he said, I need you to wait on God, and I need you to show some tolerance, because there are going to be some delays, there's going to be some problems, there's going to be some suffering that you will encounter. But do this in a way that you don't become annoyed or anxious. Ooh. Ooh, I got stuck. I got stuck. I got stuck. Ah, my goodness. Golly. Ooh. Here's another reason why we need to be quiet. We had 9 minutes. Verse 8 in the New Living Translation. I like what it says in the New Living Translation, verse 8 of the text. It says, "Stop your anger, turn from your rage. Do not envy others; it only leads to harm." Verse 9: "Evil people will be cut off, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land." So what you have to understand is that eventually the tide is going to turn. The tide is going to turn, and if we're not in a space where we're ready to 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 move when the tide is turned, because our energy has been focused on getting those people back, then guess what? We will not be able to position ourselves for when God is ready to bless us. If our energy is pointed in the direction, let me say that again. If our energy is pointed in the direction of trying to get people back that did us wrong, then we will miss the blessing that God is intending for us. So sometimes that's why you have to be quiet. That's why you got to be quiet. I have been talking to a few people over the past few weeks, and I've been telling them, just be quiet. Then be quiet. I'll be quiet. Just be quiet. Just be quiet. They've been telling me about situations that happen, and I said they are unfortunate, and they are unfortunate and disheartening situations. But in some of those situations, I'm like, I don't, all I hear the Lord saying is be quiet. Even in some of my own situations, be quiet. And that's frustrating. It is frustrating because you want to say what you want to say, especially if you know you're right. That's the other thing. You know you're right, but we have to be quiet. So we have to control our rage. We have to control our rest. We have to be quiet so that God can do what he needs to do. Um, And so, hold on. So, all right. Let me go ahead and end on this. Let me go ahead and end on this because this was just good. This was just good to me. Um, he talks about David talks about you'll inherit the land in verses 9 and 11. Verse 9 says that you'll inherit the land. Verse 11, sometimes it's translated that you'll inherit the meek shall inherit the earth. And so when you look at this, you're saying, okay, so what's the significance of this? I mean, if you're just reading this, sometimes we have a tendency to skim over this. But if we're looking at this from the ancient lens, this part is really important. Here's why you got to be quiet. Okay, so in order to understand what I believe David is talking about in this section, through his poetry, through his wisdom, is he's talking about inheriting of the land. So in order to understand what land meant, go to Second Kings chapter 5. And so if you just mark it so that you can read it in your own time, but read all of Second Kings chapter 5. And in Second Kings chapter 5, I'll give you a summarization. Second Kings chapter 5, Naaman he's the commander of the Syrian army, but he has leprosy. Someone in Syria who is an Israelite says, "Go to Israel because there's a prophet in Israel that can heal you." Naaman brings all of his money and his clothing as a gift to the king of Israel. And the word gets to Elisha that Naaman is trying to be healed. And Elisha says, "Send him my way so that he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman travels to Israel. Naaman travels and meets with Elisha. And Elisha sends out his servant to tell Naaman to go and wash in the Jordan 7 times and he would be clean. Now, notice in the text, Elisha never comes out himself. He just sends one of his servants. And so Naaman was offended. And Naaman's servants that traveled with him said that if it was something great that the prophet would have had you do, you would have had no problem doing it. And that's a sermon with it. That's a point in all by itself, because a lot of times when people ask us to do something great that brings a lot of notoriety or a lot of fanfare, a lot of attention to us, then we have no problem doing that. But sometimes they ask what God's asking us to do in order to be healed, in order to be cleansed, is sometimes it's not the greatest thing in the world. Now let me help you understand part of the reason why Naaman is offended. It's not only that it may have been that he was offended that Elisha, that he traveled all this way, and Elisha didn't even come out to meet him. Elisha sent somebody to talk to him. But here's another reason why I want to suggest that Naaman was offended is because the Jordan is one of the dirtiest rivers in that region. It's nasty. It's not clean. So you have to go dip in the muddy Jordan River. And so again, his officers put him in check and say, if it was something great, you would have done it. So he gets checked. Naaman goes down. He washes 7 times. He comes up clean. He offers money to Elisha and the clothing that he brought. And Elisha said, I'm not going to accept it. God told me he's going to do. And so Naaman says, if you won't accept it, then go ahead and let me take some dirt so that when I get home, I'll be worshiping on the dirt of the God of Israel. And so here's what chapter is saying, that Naaman wants the dirt because in the ancient Near East world, the wars were not just between kings and people, they were also between gods. And the land that the people were on had the protection of that God. so so it was believed that Syria had the protection of the God of Rimmon. His name was Rimmon, while Israel had the protection of Yahweh. All right. So after Naaman was healed, he recognized that Yahweh was above Rimmon and that there was no other God beside Yahweh. So from a cultural context, he to worship Yahweh, you had to be able to go ahead and worship Yahweh on that dirt. So that's the reason why he takes some of the dirt, some of the land back to Syria so that he could worship Yahweh on Israel's land. Hmm. In other words, they culturally believed that the land was a blessing because it had the presence of Yahweh, it had the provision of Yahweh, it had the providence of Yahweh. So, in other words, when David is saying is that when you inherit the land, you inherit the God of the land, you inherit the provision of the God of the land, you inherit the presence of the God of the land, you inherit the providence of the God of the land. In other words, you inherit the land, but you inherit God as well. Ah, woo. And because God is God of the land, you have the protection, the provision, and the presence of this most holy and wonderful God. Ah, woo. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your time with tonight. I hope you enjoyed this Bible study. Thanks for tuning in, for logging on. Just a few things, and then we'll be out your way. I want to say thank you so much for a wonderful 2020 in terms of financial giving. We just received our financial report, and we were actually up in our giving. So thank you so much for those of you that continue to support us through our financial giving. Those of you tonight that would like to say, Pastor DeSean, how can I be a blessing? How can I give into this ministry so that the work of Christ can still be done in and through Second Baptist Church? I'm glad that you asked. There's multiple ways of giving. One, you can drop it off here at the church or mail it in to 1265 Montello Street, Reno, Nevada 89512. You can also go to our website, www.secondbaptistreno.org, and click donate. You can also go ahead and text it in and text to the number 77977 in all capitals SBC Reno Give to the number 77977. Again, in all capitals, SBC Reno Give to the number 77977. If you haven't downloaded our app, go ahead to that same number, 77977, do SBC Reno app, and you can go ahead and download our app and be connected to us. I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. I have missed you all terribly. I hope you all are doing wonderful, and continue to keep us in prayer. We're going to continue asking, praying for insight as to how we can continue to impact this community, the congregation, and also this world for Christ. Just some things you need to keep on the horizon is this year's our 75th year anniversary. We have been in existence in October. Have been in existence 75 years in this community. So there's going to be some wonderful things that we have coming up to commemorate our 75th year in ministry here at Second Baptist. I hope that you all had a wonderful and safe MLK weekend, holiday weekend. Continue to be safe, continue to remain socially distant, make wise decisions to be safe. All right, and we will see you live on Sunday on YouTube, live at 9 a.m. We have a special treat for you, so you want to tune in live at 9 on Sunday morning. We have a special treat for you, and we'll see you here on Sunday. All right, God bless you, God keep you, and we'll see you soon.